So, I guess we'll move on. After the perhaps unexpected success of Blade, Marvel saw that making movie adaptations of their properties could work. Wonder how that panned out in the end. And in an entirely shocking and unprecedented move, ordered a sequel, Blade 2, to be released in 2002. Blade this time is in Prague, trying to locate Whistler, who, it turns out, is not dead, but being moved around from place to place by the vampires that took him in order to keep him from the Daywalker. And he is absolutely not bait that will absolutely not be significant later. Shortly after rescuing Whistler, a couple of vampires dressed as ninjas break into Blade's base of operations and begin fighting as a prelude to presenting the offer of a truce. Weird way to go about it. Before having the absolute temerity to complain that Blade's people shot first. Aye. These two vampires, Danny John Jules Assad and Leonard Varela's Nisa, take Blade, Whistler, and Norman Reedus' Scud, the dumbest name, to meet the ancient vampire Damoskinos and his Blood Pack, a group of vampires trained to hunt, well, Blade. Amongst these are Ron Perlman's, for some reason, racist vampire, the guy from the Fast and the Furious who's always angry but who isn't Michelle Rodriguez, Donnie Yen, and a ginger Scotsman. The reason the truce has been offered is that a new threat has emerged, deadly to human and vampire alike. Jared has to make do with Windows. Sorry, that pun works better when you know his name, but played by 80s boy band member Luke and or Matt Goss. I believe in John Oliver's single Olsen twin theory, to wit that there is only one of them, just moving really fast between two positions, and have extended it to all twins. This Nomak, who, depending on how you interpret the exposition, may only be 3 days old.
Yeah.
That doesn't make a lot of sense, but we'll brush over that for now, is one of a new strain of vampire called a Reaper, who feeds on vampires as well as humans, and who leaves his victims as zombies, because writer David S. Goyer got bored with vampires and had to add zombies too within one single film. Blade agrees to team up with the Blood Pack, who absolutely will not betray him, and you will of course be shocked and appalled when they absolutely do betray him. And indeed the scene is set for some snappy action scenes, fun barbs, nifty weapons and questionable physics, and a fate for Blade that's not exactly the same as the first film, but may as well be.
Yeah.
Again written by David S. Goyer, Blade 2 is helmed by then little-known cult director Guillermo del Toro, who would use this film's success as a springboard into making Hellboy and Pan's Labyrinth. As you might expect from the Mexican, the film's pretty stylish, though the source material and the fact that it's a sequel limits his scope for putting too much of his personal stamp on it. That said, he oversaw some striking practical effects and animatronics for the Reapers, which still hold up pretty well today, unlike the handful of CGI sequences that don't hold up today.
Yeah, those digital actors, no. No thanks.
Don't hold up today, largely because they didn't hold up then.
Yeah.
Looking more than a little like, well, cartoons, I'm afraid. Particularly, before I finish, that scene in front of the floodlights.
Yes.
It looked ropey at the time. It looks ropey now. It's not good.
Yeah, no, not good.
It seemed to fall squarely in that time period when CGI was become more prevalent, more affordable, but people hadn't quite nailed motion yet.
Yeah.
So it doesn't look like a human moving. It's not natural. I mean, you still get that problem today sometimes, but very much that period where using it was more common, but nobody really got movement and weight properly done.
Yeah, the inverse kinematics have not been quite worked out for it
Yes.
when they start. They can almost get away with it when they're just doing normal stuff, but as soon as they start trying to have the kind of more exaggerated stuff that it's kind of employed for, with these, I think they were called digital stuntmen at the time, when they were having these fights, it does not look convincing. They just haven't quite nailed how joints move, and it just looks a bit. It looks a bit video gamey. It's not the best. It didn't ruin the film for me, but it's an obvious flaw for it. And I think one that you could arguably say does age worse than the effects in Blade 1, because these kind of were at least trying to be cutting edge and sophisticated rather than at the time of creation, rather than just what they were able to do in the time that they had. The kind of hole they dug themselves for in Blade 1, so perhaps less forgivable, but it doesn't ruin it that much for me.
There aren't very many of them. I think that's the key.
Yeah.
There's a handful of fairly short scenes apart from that. Apart from the extended fight at the beginning, there's not much for the rest of the film.
Yeah.
So once you get past that, you don't have to worry about it too much.
Yeah.
Musically, it is of a piece with Blade and very much a piece of its time. The soundtracks of Blade and Blade 2 joining the likes of The Matrix in defining a very specific period of the soundtrack of the late 90s to early 2000s in film. But that said, it does happen to be one of my favourite film soundtracks, so that's fine by me.
Yes.
Peter Amundsen's editing is perhaps a little choppier and more hyperkinetic than Paul Rubell's in Blade, but it's fortunately not yet approaching the "Jeepus, would you please keep the damn thing still so I can see what's happening" frustration of the ADHD afflicted, the Bourne supremacy in its ilk, and allows a fair bit of scope for Snipes to show off his moves. Again, like the first film. Talking of Snipes, he's still playing the gruff hero here, but he's as watchable as ever, and the goofy moments are turned way down while keeping, or perhaps even increasing, the snark, meaning that the character is more entertaining. Once again, Chris Christopherson is a great foil. Ron Perlman's fun, and the Goss twin does about as good a job as expected. On this most recent viewing, though, the big disappointment was Thomas Kretschmann's Damaskinos, who doesn't really do a lot.
No.
But to be fair, was always going to be a letdown after years and years of experiencing the clip of a wonderfully delighted Guillermo del Toro laughing heartily and self-deprecatingly at the screen test for his original intention of Damaskinos. The film, though, remains a very entertaining action movie, ridiculously be-haired Michael Bolton vampire out of 10.
Yeah, just if you've not seen the Blade deleted scenes with the director's commentary on, you can find most of them on YouTube, and it's well worth doing so, because almost every other deleted scene that I've ever watched will have the director saying, "I really liked this scene, but I had to cut it for pacing reasons or time constraints."
Guy Ritchie stuff's particularly bad for that.
Yes, every single scene. Oh, I really loved the scene. Don't know why I cut it. Oh, yeah, it was too long. And that seems to be the usual thing, because you don't, I suppose if you're a director, you don't really want to either admit you've made a stupid mistake or criticise anything that's going on in it. But Del Toro is more than happy enough to say, this is the worst scene I've ever created, and this is the stupidest looking character I've ever made. It's a joy, it's a delight to watch, to someone being honest for a change.
Yeah, it's one of those frustrations I find is that I really, really honestly wish that I liked Guillermo del Toro's films so much more than I do.
Yeah.
I really like him.
Yeah.
I think he's a great guy, and then when he's look at how terrible his original incarnation of this ancient vampire was with the straggly hair, and he goes, look at that fecker. It's fantastic. Yeah, the honesty's really nice, and the fact that he's been self-deprecating and stuff, it's nice.
Yeah, Del Toro's done many films that I can appreciate the craft of, but for the most part, I've just not really liked them all that much. I mean, it's strange to say that this trash is my favourite Del Toro film. It's just a hell of a lot of fun. I don't know if I would say much more than I'd be saying in the first one, but yeah, it's basically just the Wesley Snipes show, and he's great in it. So yeah, what's not to like?
I'm glad you said that about the favourite Guillermo del Toro film, Scott, because while watching this, I'm thinking, yeah, this probably is.
It's certainly the most fun of his films. You could maybe argue something of his earlier stuff might have more depth or art to it, maybe. I'm not sure. Or I know a lot of people really love Pan's Labyrinth. I watched it, and it's like it's just another film that I really wanted to like and just couldn't. It's just couldn't quite connect with me there. But yeah,
I feel we mentioned that a while ago, but for me, Pan's Labyrinth is the only one that's challenging Blade 2 for me. But
yeah.
Pan's Labyrinth was a film that I didn't actually like the first time I saw it. I almost had to work to like that film.
Yeah. Whereas
Blade 2 is like, yep, this is a hell of a lot of fun, and watching it 15 years later, yep, still a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Well done, Mr. Del Toro. And again, it's exactly what you're saying, Scott. Things like, you look at Hellboy and the scope of it and the imagination design is all fantastic. The film is like, meh.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas this one, there's a bit less of his imagination in it for the reasons I mentioned, but it just seems to be so much more entertaining.
Yeah, you've mentioned the only thing that cropped up in rewatching this that stuck out to me as a kind of niggle with the stunt people, digital stunt people. But the rest of this film I still really love. It's just a hell of a lot of fun. The kind of back and forths between Del Toro and Ron Perlman add a little thing. Like the way you can end an exchange with now you have an explosive device stuck in the back of your head as though it's a perfectly natural consequence of your actions that's led up to this point. All that stuff kind of works really well. A really early performance for Norman Reedus, who will go on to better things, I suppose, in the Walking Dead franchise, but perhaps one of the least successful additions, but even then you still kind of warmed to him, I think, by most part, but more or less at the same time. I agree with Whistler was just starting to like this kid before he kind of turns at the end, and he gets his comeuppance in duly spectacular fashion, so that's good by me. Yes, it's done a good job of introducing a whole bunch of stuff, but not really, in a way that we'll go into in Blade Trinity. This has way more characters than the first film did, but it kind of limits its scope to keeping the focus on the people who you're actually in any way invested in.
Yeah.
And it kind of even manages to make me feel a bit of sympathy for Danny John Jules. What's Danny John Jules doing it? Why is the cat from Red Dwarf in film? That kind of threw me a bit for a while. I'd kind of forgotten that Danny John Jules was in this film. But it's just strange seeing a guy who I know very, very well from his performance as the cat in Red Dwarf, like as probably my favourite TV show of certainly when I was growing up around this time as well. It's just odd seeing him in this kind of film, and I can't think of him seeing in any other major blockbuster I can think of.
It's just occurred to me that maybe he just got cast because they knew he looked good in the sort of fang.
Yes,
the cat.
That might be it, actually.
And the only other thing I can remember seeing Danny John Jules in is I got a bit part in Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels as the barman that's telling them about Rory Baker.
Yeah.
I've never forgotten he was in this. I always found it kind of odd.
Yes.
Watching this film, though, I think we found and maybe it's been said, actually, I don't follow it, so I don't know, but I think we found the origin of Death Stranding.
Yeah.
Because Hideo Kojima's new game has Norman Reedus and Guillermo del Toro and babies in pouches, all of which are in this film together. So, maybe this is the origin story of that new game that's coming out later this year.
Yeah, I hope the game does turn out to be a Blade 2 sequel. That would be much better. Yeah.
Actually, the last thing I'll mention in this is that I think the one other way that this improves over the first film, but as I said, on this rewatch, there's not so much between them, is that it does cut out the sort of slightly odd tonal moments in this where the film almost stops for Blade to do something ridiculous.
Yeah.
The three in particular, it does a weird fist pump. There's this thing with like a batarang sort of thing that he stops almost to pose and smile with.
That's an awesome scene, though. I was gratified when you posted that on Twitter early because I'd screen captured the exact same moment because it's so cool.
Yeah, it's crazy, and it's quite clearly deliberate because it's timed. There's sort of stroboscopic light in the background, and it's timed so that just as his mouth reaches full smile, the strobe comes on into that part of the room like it's a camera flash from the action happening behind. It's ludicrous.
If you enjoy your job, you'll never work a day in your life.
So they're entertaining, but they do sort of not fit so well in the film because, as I said, the film always stops to show them. It's just like sort of a moment, it's a momentary beat, but it's so odd. And then the third one is there's a bit where after killing, I think it's either before he kills the vampire, right after he's killed a bunch of them, he takes his sword, sort of half crouches down, puts the tip of the sword on the ground, and turns it really, really slowly just to make a perfect pose. Like that. That's so weird. Why is that in there?
You say that, but I've lost count of the amount of times I've absent-mindedly, because he's kind of drawn, I think it's something from samurai films, he's kind of drawn a little arc, and it's like almost like kind of a line in the sand sort of thing.
Yeah.
And the amount of times I've absent-mindedly kind of done that kind of same sort of pose just with my leg and foot, just things, just in sort of absent-minded parody of this scene. Yes, I don't know. I need to go back and watch them, but I'm sure that was in some like older samurai films. It's probably a reference to that, but
maybe.
Yeah. I would need to go back. But yes, I don't mind it. I'm on board with these little stylistics no matter what film it's in. So